Yeah, how long do we have? 15 minutes or so. Okay, fine. I'm good, thank you. I'm debating two topics, so maybe we'll do a vote and you'll tell me. First topic is drinking on Purim. So enough. Second topic is a more controversial topic, is the honey trap and halakha. In other words, can a female Mossad agent sleep with the enemy in order to get information? Okay. Oh, okay, we'll get to it. So is that topic number two? Okay. Topic number two. All right, then you might need to give me 17 minutes instead of 15 minutes, but we'll try our best. Okay, you're right. We'll get back to Yael. But why am I choosing this topic? Because Esther was a similar circumstance. Why do I say Esther was a similar circumstance? Because even though, according to the simple reading of the Megillah, Esther is the niece or the cousin of Mordechai, the Gemara makes an interesting inference. It says that, but it says but Mordechai. Sorry, bait. The word it uses the word bait comes from the house of. Don't read it the house of. Read it the word but. She was. Sorry, don't read it the word but. Read it the word bait. She wasn't the daughter. She was from the bait, from the house of Mordechai, which means that they were married. Okay, that's what the Gemara says, that they were married. The Gemara asks, well, if they were married, hello, how does Mordechai send her off to be with Achashverosh? We know that, fine, to save the Jewish people, very nice, but we know that there's three sins that you should rather die than do. Murder, adultery, and idolatry. This is adultery. How also that Esther was allowed to marry Ahasuerus, and if they were married, potentially they had seems that they would have had relations together, and yet she was married to Mordechai. Wouldn't be allowed. The Gemara brings two answers. We're only going to focus on the one. Is that Gemara says that Esther was karka ola, which means that she acted as if she was just karka. She was just land, just a piece of land. In other words, Esther sat passively while Achashverosh had relations with her, and because she acted passively, she wasn't guilty of committing adultery. That's the Gemara's answer. Just park that for a second. We'll get back to it. Shvut Yaakov. Yaakov was mid 1700s. Brings quite a shocking case of a group of Jewish people that were walking down the streets and they were attacked by bandits. The bandits wanted to kill them. In order to save themselves, one of the women amongst them says, I will present myself to the bandits, let them take me, let them have relations with me, rape me, and in doing so, I'll be able to save all of you. And that's what happened, and indeed, they were all saved. And the Shvut Yaakov was then asked, well, what's the step? First of all, did this woman do the right thing? And second of all, can she go back to her husband? So the Shvut Yaakov answers, we won't focus so much on the second part of the question. Shvut Yaakov says he thinks that it was the right thing. Why was it the right thing? So maybe we could use Esther as an example. What's the difference between this case and Esther? Or is there a difference?
Beginning life in danger.
What you're saying makes it even more problematic. Because if Esther didn't realize that there was any potential threat to the Jewish people, then she had no excuse at all to be with Achashverosh. The excuse that she has to commit adultery is that maybe she's saving the Jewish people. Over here, there's definitely a danger to life. I will want to assume, even though I agree with you, according to according to the flow of the Megillah, it's not so certain that Esther knew the immediate dangers that the Jewish people were in. But I would like to assume that when she did go to Ahasuerus's palace, she understood that her being the queen would have some sort of influence on the Jewish people in Persia. Big difference could be is that this woman put herself directly out there. I'm not sure how much Esther put herself out there or how much Esther was forced to go to the palace. Not clear from the Megillah. Did Esther decide by her own accord that she wanted to be one of the women to be in the beauty contest to become the wife of the king, or was that something that was forced upon her? Be that as it may, when Esther came to the king's palace, she was passive. Now, a bit of a difficult thing to say. What does it mean she was passive? Does it mean she was totally passive? And therefore she wasn't guilty at all? Because surely, Rav Moshe Feinstein touches on this. He says, if she was totally passive, then surely Achashverosh would have picked up on something. Remember what happened to Vashti? When she showed a bit of resistance? But Esther wouldn't have done the same thing. She would have shown any resistance, she would have been killed. So Rav Moshe Feinstein says it must have been that even though we say that Esther was passive, she was passive in that she was forced to go to the king. But once she went to the king, she would have to have played the game a little bit. He says that there was definitely must have been nishuk v'chibuk. There definitely have to be hugs and kisses along the way that entire relations, because if not, the king would have realized that she was onto something. And that means that when we talk about Esther being passive, we're not talking about somebody being totally passive, that she's just, lying there waiting to be raped, so to speak, by Ahasuerus. She initiated it a bit, or she responded to Ahasuerus's request for intimacy. Sri Esh takes it even further. He says that no, by definition, in relations, the woman is considered the more passive party. And therefore, even if Esther would have initiated some foreplay, so to speak, she still would have been considered passive. But the question still begs is, okay, well, what about the big three? Even if you say she's passive and she really wasn't involved, she still did something. She still had some involvement. She still put herself out there. And we go back to the case of the Shut Yaakov with this woman that put herself out there in front of the bandits. She definitely suggested herself. So what are we going to do? Somebody else mentioned another case we have in Tanakh, and that is Yael. Story of Yael and Sisera, where Yael sees Sisera, and the Gemara really goes to town to explain how intimate Yael was with Sisera. They said she enticed him. They had relations 7 times in order so that Yael could get Sisera drunk, and then she took a tent peg and she killed him. Also save the Jewish people. Yael, it's very hard to use the passive argument. She's not passive at all. She goes out of her way to entice Sisera. Big 3: adultery, idolatry, and murder. She committed adultery. By the way, Yael was married to Chever. So, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about Yael? The Meiri comes along and he says, okay, when you're doing it not just to save yourself, but when you're doing it to save the majority, to save the Rabbim community, there's a leniency. Strange leniency, because still big 3. But he says, when you're trying to save the majority, there's a leniency and you can put yourself out there. And that's what happened with the bandits. This woman was being attacked. There was a community of people with her. How you define community, we won't address now, but because there's a community of people involved, she was entitled to put herself out there and suggest herself for a relation. That's what Yael did. That's what the Shut Yaakov's argument is. Nor do Yehuda doesn't ask this. He says, okay, so there's a community of people that are in danger, and you're going to put yourself out there, still not allowed. There's a case, there's an explicit Gemara that if bandits attack a city and they ask to hand somebody else over, and then they'll release everybody else, you're allowed to hand somebody over.
No.
Why not? But logically, what you're going to land up saving. I don't know how many people they hold hostage. Let's say you've got 50 people in the city. You're going to save 50 people if you give over one person. But you're right. You're not allowed to do it. Why? Because you can't come along and say we're going to pick this person to be handed over, because by doing so, you're saying this person's blood is less red than everybody else's blood. You're giving a price to a person's life. And therefore, you're not allowed to decide one person can be given over in order to save a life. So same thing in our case. Okay, it's not murder, it's idolatry, but the same logic applies. How can you choose one person to be given over to the many? Shouldn't be fair. So based on that, the Noda Yehuda says, this woman did the wrong thing. She shouldn't have done. So what is the leniency? So perhaps the leniency is this. He says, not that you're saving the Rabbim, not that you're saving the many, not that you're saving the community, but when it comes to saving Klal Yisrael, maybe the laws are different. In other words, for a person to say, for us to come along and say, I can't pick out one person amongst the audience to save the many because their blood's not as red as mine, maybe you can't say that. But when you've got the whole of the Jewish people in danger, and one person gives up their life to save the Jewish people, maybe that does make sense. I mean, that's very logical. That's what soldiers do every day. Why should a soldier put his life on the line to save other people? Because if he doesn't, all of the Jewish people will be in danger. And that's the same logic over here. What right does a soldier have to put his life on the front line, putting his life in danger? You can't put your life in danger. What right does she have to commit adultery? When you're doing it for Yisrael, when you're doing it for the Jewish people, maybe there's more room to be lenient. And based on that, maybe we could say that there's a leniency. The question then is, well, let's speak practically now. You've got a female Mossad agent. By the way, with a male agent, it's less of an issue because technically, although there's Rabbi Gershon says we don't have more than one wife, a male to sleep to have relations, although it's promiscuity, it's not one of the big three. But for a female Mossad agent to have relations with the enemy, it's to save Yisrael, maybe it's okay. The question is, how do you define saving Yisrael? That's a hard question. Meaning, when she's gaining intel from from the enemy here, anyone seen Founder? There's scenes like this. Is she really are they saving Yisrael, or are they saving individuals in Yisrael? So Rav Kook has a big chiddush. He says that whenever you're working within the realms of Eretz Israel, of defending the Jewish homeland in Eretz Israel, you can assume that is not only for Eretz Israel, but it's for all of Israel. In other words, if Israel is in danger, big parts of Israel are in danger, then Klal Israel is in danger. And so we've got a few things to rely on. Number one, perhaps you could say that the woman by nature by definition, is passive, like Esther was passive. Number two, you're doing it to save the many. Number three, if it's not even for the many, it's to save Yisrael. And over here, when we're talking about Jews in Eretz Israel, specifically in today's time, we can add this on, where you have a Jewish majority almost in Eretz Israel, that's saving all of Klal Israel. And another leniency to add on maybe is, not everyone agrees with this, is that maybe the big three doesn't apply when a Jew has relations with a non-Jew. There's a prohibition of adultery with a non-Jew, but it's not punished. It's not considered one of the big three. Big three is when Jews have relations with Jews. So if you're talking about a Mossad agent who's having relations with somebody who's potentially not Jewish, then maybe there's room to be lenient, provided that she herself is single. If she's married, then it becomes more complicated. But even if she's married, maybe there's room to be lenient. But the best if we find a single Mossad agent, woman Mossad agent, who's doing it to save Klal Israel, it could be that there's a leniency. And listen, the Gemara says that women have one of the best weapons. Men have guns. What's the woman's best weapon? Is her ability to seduce. And if she can like your elder, if she could do it to save people in Israel, then maybe there's room to be lenient. Not halacha lamasa or any of it. I hope maybe I don't know if there's any Mossad agents in the room. But what I think it does show is it shows that look at the question. There is a chief rabbi of the Mossad. We don't know who he is because he's a Mossad agent. But this question is not this question is not a theoretical question. It's a question that really did exist. And you can turn around and say, well, so it's a bit of a weird thing to be talking about. But on the other hand, wow, look at the laws that we have to deal with today. Look where Am Yisrael is. That even our Mossad agents, when they do seemingly the most promiscuous things, they want to know that they're doing it according to halacha and according to Jewish law. And I think it reminds us to put things in perspective because we've had a hard year, difficult year, and a lot's gone on, and a lot of us feel we live in such terrible times. The fact that these are the questions that we're dealing with in modern day Israel for 2,000 years since the times of Yael, we haven't been dealing with questions of this nature. Shows that Baruch Hashem, we live in blessed times. Thank you for having me.
And the other one, when Pharaoh sets out to round up all the girls, it specifically says Nara Basula, all virgin girls. So if there's any question of her being married to Mordecai, it wasn't going to be picked up.
Because nefesh applies to a limit. In other words, because yes, you save a life, you do anything to save a life, unless it's one of the big three: murder, adultery, idolatry. But here's the but, and this is basically what we said: is when it comes to saving either the Rabbi or Klal Yisrael, then even if it's one of the big three, it could be that we still save the lives of the many, or we put the big three aside. In terms of Nara Betula, it's a fair question on the Gemara. Does it mean that she presented herself as a virgin, or she was actually a virgin? Or
But that was the requirement.
But I'm not sure. But listen, what's strange about this chazal, because it is a chazal. If you look at the simple reading of the Gemara, it doesn't seem that they were married. Why did Chazal find it necessary to tell us that it's not that they were cousins, that they were really married, and take the text out of its simple meaning is very, very strange. And perhaps, according to the simple reading of the text, maybe they weren't married. Maybe the only reason why the Gemara does that is simply to raise the question the question that we really raise, and you see the extent you can go to save the Jewish people.
I think it's possible for Esther to have been lying back and thinking of England. Achashverosh, also says he offered her, they say flamboyantly, up to half the kingdom. He wouldn't need a quarter of the kingdom if she was lying there and thinking of England. It would have come up with something to make it more
So I'm not following the argument 100%.
No,
She's passive, yeah. Yes.
Would you like a path? Well, he's offering her half the kingdom. What person?
Oh, so you're saying she's not as innocent as we're making her out to be. Really? By the way, I'm not convinced that it's such a great offer. If you really love your wife, you're gonna say to her, "Hey, you're gonna have half the kingdom, but the other half is for me." It's a bit of a snarl argument.
It's a very interesting talk this was, which we can all take to our Purim Suda table and discuss it with our wives and see what they think about it. Okay, thank you so much.
No. Her children joined the Jewish people.
Anyway,
Or the it's not that. When did she reveal that she's Jewish?
taking for a life at the end when Haman won the. Yeah.
She doesn't say Jewish. All she says, only in chapter 8, when after her does she say, by the way, my name is Mordechai, and she seems to be right at the end. Okay.
Right, on that note, that was very interesting. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn off the Zoom for those online. We'll see you all next week.